Jonathan Kuminga trade rumors were heating up last night, but we know nothing has gone down just yet. We're going to break down all the reports that came out as Kuminga might end up in Sacramento. First, though, make sure you are subscribed to the channel as we are almost at our next milestone of 97,000 subs right here at Warriors Today. I'm asking today if 164 diehard Golden State Warriors fans can go down below and hit that big red sub button for 100% free Warriors content all offseason long. What's going on, Dub Nation? You're watching Warriors Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith. And on today's show, we're going to break down all the reports that came out on Wednesday night about Jonathan Kuminga and the impending potential sign and trade from Golden State. And the team that was being thrown around there the most was the Sacramento Kings. But before we get into what the offers were and how far the trade discussions actually got, I wanted to preface with this from Bobby Marks, who's kind of talking about Kuminga's free agency and how it all stacks up around, in the context of the NBA at this point. He said Jonathan Kuminga's got no leverage. The only leverage he has right now is to sign the qualifying offer of $7.9 million and go out in free agency next offseason. It's not a good time to be a restricted free agent. Look, there's not a lot of money around the NBA right now. We've known for quite a while that the market for Jonathan Kuminga is not that big. We've heard about the Miami Heat. We've heard about the Chicago Bulls. We've heard about the Pelicans having a couple of rumblings in there as well. But I feel like the furthest things have ever gotten along is really with the Sacramento Kings, which is what we're going to talk about on today's show. But there's not a lot of money around the league. The leverage that Kuminga would have with that qualifying offer, signing that, is it would just be a short-term, one-year deal, and that would kind of screw over the Warriors if they wanted to end up dealing him next season. I think that Golden State would end up signing him to something in the realm of $20 to $25 million a year if all else failed, so that they would have that contract value and able to include in a trade next season or beyond. But like I said, these four teams were the most interested in Jonathan Kuminga, but at this point, I feel like I can kind of cross a couple of them out, to be honest with you. Miami Heat were, at the forefront of all these negotiations. Before free agency started, we heard that these two teams, the Heat and the Bulls, were at the top of likely destinations that Kuminga could end up with. But talks have gone quiet with the Miami Heat. Bulls insiders have said we've heard nothing on the Kuminga front. They'd also drafted Noah Asenge and brought in Isaac Okoro. So how much time would Jonathan Kuminga have, or how much opportunity would he get in Chi-Town? Miami, those talks have quieted, and I don't know if I would really want much of what Miami could offer back in a one-and-one sign-and trade. Their assets aren't that great. The Pelicans, they have some really cool assets, but I'm not so sure how willing they are to give those guys up. We'll talk about the Pelicans before we get out of today's show, but Herb Jones, if you could swing that for Jonathan Kuminga, I'm hitting accept until the button breaks. But who knows if New Orleans is willing to do that. Sacramento, though, that's where we're going to start on today's show, because it feels like this is a game of cat and mouse, maybe a little game of chicken between the Kings and the Warriors here. Neither GM wants to get swindled. Nobody in this league anymore wants to get taken for a ride when it comes to what they send away or give up in a trade and have things blow up in their face. That's how guys lose jobs. And the Kings also did just hire a new GM in Scott Perry, formerly of the Knicks. This is a guy who's been around the league, a veteran and somebody who's not going to be pushed around, but neither is Mike Dunleavy and the Warriors front office. Let's start with this from Matt George, who is the Sacramento Kings insider we're going to kind of reference a lot today. And he said that, when we talked about this on yesterday's show, that Malik Monk would be the player that Sacramento is willing to include in a deal for Jonathan Kuminga. But there's also some other weird things about Malik Monk's future. The Kings, according to him, have said they remain open still to a sign and trade of Malik Monk to Detroit as part of the Dennis Schroeder deal that he signed, 3 years, $45 million. A terrible deal, by the way, to go to Sacramento. But regardless, they're willing to include him in that deal to remain flexible and maintain their non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And then meanwhile, the Kings are also very engaged on the Jonathan Kuminga front and in a deal which I'm told would likely not involve Malik Monk. Now, why is that? Well, it's because apparently, according to George, that these sounds like the Malik Monk aspect of things, he says, is because the Warriors are less interested in Malik Monk than maybe the Kings are willing to deal him out. Looks like the Golden State Warriors don't really want Malik Monk back in the Kuminga deal, not only because maybe they don't think that Monk is better than Kuminga, I personally do, but Golden State would also have to add more back in the deal as Malik Monk makes almost $19 million. The 50% of whatever Kuminga's new salary would be in 25-26 would not be $19 million. So Golden State would have to maybe add another guy like Buddy Hield into the deal like we mocked up yesterday. And he said obviously the Kings would would need to open up space to absorb Kuminga, so like just sign him to an offer sheet straight up. It doesn't look like Sacramento's going to be able to do that. at this point. But the Kings do want him, and Brett Siegel did say this over at Clutch Points. He's been doing a great job this offseason keeping tabs. So the Kings have made it very obvious they want Jonathan Kuminga. However, the Warriors, I'm told, have zero interest in seeing their young forward go to their rival. Again, think what you will. This is just what he's reporting. I'm not going to really speak on that at this point, even though I think that's idiotic. There I go. I just spoke on it. All right. There doesn't appear to be a plausible path at this time for a sign and trade routing Kuminga to Sacramento. I don't necessarily think that shuts the door on anything. But to basically summarize where we are so far, per Matt George, the Kings are open to including Malik Monk in the Schroeder sign and trade, but they would probably rather trade him for Kuminga, I think. But it doesn't look like Golden State's all that interested in doing that. So they're, again, like I said, playing a game of chicken here. Who's going to budge first on wanting to accept the terms of this deal? With the Kings knowing that Golden State's not that interested in Malik Monk, they have obviously pivoted to another deal, but it's not one that I'm sure that the Warriors front office is too happy with. George saying this as well. He said, I'm hearing the Kings are attempting to use pieces like Devin Carter and former Warrior Dario Saric, and even draft compensation. I don't know what kind of draft compensation. I'm sure it's not first-round picks, to Golden State as part of a Kuminga deal. And I've been on this show saying before that I would accept low-key pennies on the dollar for Jonathan Kuminga, but this deal stinks. I'm not going to lie. Like, this deal stinks. Even a Kuminga hater like me can see that I'm not accepting something like this with Devin Carter being the headliner back. The Kings apparently think they're putting pressure on the Warriors by, throwing these low-ball offers out there. I think the Warriors can remain patient. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But from the Golden State point of view, you would think that if they can't get Malik Monk and they don't really want this deal, the player they would look to be getting back from Sacramento would be Keegan Murray. But according to Matt George, doesn't look like Sacramento is going to be willing to trade Keegan Murray for Kuminga. And he said, his tweet that kind of summarized this was saying, anybody who's saying anything about Keegan Murray going back to the in a Kuminga sign and trade should just stop that conversation right now because there's no chance it happens. I don't know. Maybe Dunleavy could swindle a weak front office potentially in Sacramento. Because, look, you say what you will about Scott Perry being a veteran. He gave Dennis Schroeder $15 million a year. So you never know what could happen in this league. But at this time, it doesn't seem like Keegan Murray is going to be on the block in a Kuminga sign and trade. But then, it's all so confusing, right? Because then George says the trade talks are very advanced. What does that mean, honestly? Trade talks are advanced. Well, are they finalizing a trade? No, clearly they're not. Are they discussing a package and trying to work out the details? No, it clearly doesn't seem like that's all being the case right now. So I don't really know what he meant by these trade talks are very advanced, but I do believe in the next 3-4 days or so, we are going to see the future of Jonathan Kuminga unfold, even though the Warriors might be patient enough to let it go even longer than that. But get creative in the comment section for me. What would you want from the Kings for Jonathan Kuminga, and probably more? If you're willing to accept that Devin Carter, Dario Saric package, Godspeed. Even I'm not willing to do that. So in that case, what would you want to give up to Sacramento for Kuminga and probably more assets, as you're probably going to have to match salaries at some point? Get a sign and trade idea with Sacramento for me down in the comment section. The reason I say that Matt George is kind of saying a bunch of nonsense here is because my GOAT, Anthony Slater, came out with this. But after all these tweets came out last night, so that's why I waited a little bit to show you guys this one. After all the Matt George tweets, after all the Brett Siegel tweets, this is what we heard before we went to bed. Said there's nothing near the finish line on the Jonathan Kuminga front on the third night of free agency, as the third night of free agency wraps, per sources. Conversations ongoing with Warriors and several teams on the periphery. And I had to kind of I had to look that word up, I'm not going to lie. And it's basically, teams kind of on the outside, not too pressing on the situation. Warriors not too pressing on those teams. It's all kind of fluid right now, and nobody is pounding the table to get this done at this point in time. And then he closed it all out with the Warriors also are waiting on the Al Horford decision as well, which we will discuss in just a moment. But look, Warriors fans, Dub Nation, that is the Bible, okay? Anthony Slater is our Bible. In Slater, we trust. We don't need to go to Sacramento or to national NBA reporters and all that stuff. If Anthony Slater is reporting it, then that is the report that I'm going to believe. And at this point, it does not seem like the Kuminga trade is as close as we had all maybe thought in the hours of Wednesday night. So to tie everything together that we've learned to this point, the Sacramento Kings clearly want Jonathan Kuminga, but it doesn't seem like they want him bad enough to give up a big-time return. They are willing to include Malik Monk, but it doesn't look like they're willing to include Keegan Murray. They're throwing this low-ball offer of Devin Carter and Dario Saric out. The Warriors don't really want Malik Monk. That's why they kind of pivoted to that dog shit offer. Now, both GMs are in this position where they don't want to get big dog. Mike Dunleavy, in his entering his third season as GM, and then Scott Perry obviously trying to make a name for himself in Sacramento after having some previous time and success with the Knicks. Neither one of them wants to be swindled, fleeced, pushed around, led astray, run amok, bamboozled. You know the words. So it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen here if the two sides will end up coming to an agreement. But the Warriors, if the Kings were able to find a way to actually sign Kuminga to an offer sheet, free up some money, and just sign him to to that sheet, the Warriors would easily match that because I'm sure it would only be something in the realm of like $20 million flat. Golden State would easily match that deal and maybe potentially look to move him down the line. And this all is kind of favoring Golden State because Kuminga himself has said that hasn't said that he wants to play elsewhere. He doesn't want to, stay in Golden State long term. Like he hasn't made that explicitly clear yet. So that's why I feel like Golden State has a little bit of leverage here in letting this go a little bit longer. Now, like I said, Matt George thinks Sacramento has a leverage. Like I think the opposite. Like Golden State has no pressure here. Like, yeah, you would hate to see the dysfunction roll into next season, but like if you're really going to get absolutely nothing for Jonathan Kuminga in a sign and trade, then maybe it is worth it to just sign him to the $20 million for 2-3 seasons and trade him down the line next season. Hopefully early once that new deal kicks in. I think it's 6 months until then. Then Tim Kawakami came out with this. Look, I don't know if this necessarily means anything, but I just wanted to kind of help Warriors fans understand why this offseason has kind of started a little bit slow. He says that Mike Dunleavy's got it plotted out. He has things plotted out, and it doesn't necessarily mean that those things will happen. But this Warriors front office does have a plan, and they do have a vision of what the roster next season is going to look like. Again, it takes two to tango in this league. Who knows if they'll actually get anywhere on the deals that he has planned out, but at least they have a plan, and hopefully that doesn't include Jonathan Kuminga next season. What do you guys think? What's your confidence level in Mike Dunleavy? Scale it for me down in the comment section, 1 through 10. If it's a 1, that means we should fire him, and he should never make another basketball decision for the Warriors again. If it's a 10, that means you have full faith in Mike Dunleavy, and we are going to get back to championship gold one more time with Steph and company. Before we move on today's show, I got to tell you guys about this awesome deal, and it's the Warriors playoff shirts for 2025. Look, I know they ended it in the second round, and things kind of went south after Curry went down, but I still love rocking the commemorative playoff tees. And to be honest with you guys, this is a successful Warrior season, all things considered. You guys can get this shirt at this link right here, and it's like half off, so go get it today. Chatsports.com/win4bay. Win for the bay, you see right there. Win for bay, you see it in the link. Comment section, description of today's video. That link is to make it easy for you guys. Go get yourself some Warriors 2025 playoff gear today. All right, we alluded to it a little bit before with Slater, and he was saying that the Golden State Warriors are still waiting on the Al Horford decision. Now, it's interesting because the Celtics are kind of taking their time with their offseason. They still have more moves to make themselves in order to free up some money, and I'm sure they still want to, very much so, bring back Al Horford. Not so sure that he wants to be back there in a transition year in Boston. So it seems like Golden State is in the driver's seat when it comes to signing the Dominican big man. Brett Siegel came out with this saying, to my knowledge, the Warriors have made the biggest push. And this was him quoting somebody on Twitter saying, have there been any other teams in the race that Al Horford has been debating between Golden State and obviously Boston's in there too, but it seems unlikely at this point. So he says, to my knowledge, the Warriors have made the biggest push. The Lakers have remained involved, and retirement is still on the table as well. So it seems like it's Warriors, probably like a 65-70%, Lakers like a 20%, and then a 10% retirement is kind of the way that I would do it. And then Siegel said, I don't know of any other options for Horford as of last night. And the presumption around the league, I was listening to Bill Simmons last night, and every report that we've heard over the past couple of days is that everybody in the league thinks Horford to Golden State is kind of a done deal at this point. But we know as Warriors fans, Golden State's been on the doorstep for even some of these like mid-free agents over the past few years, and they haven't gotten the deals done when it matters. So I'm going to believe it when I see it. But at this time, I do feel pretty confident that Horford will end up in the Bay Area, and I think he will fit magnificently. Should the Warriors sign him, though? I mean, you guys were pretty adamant in the comment section when we were live a couple days ago that we do not want Al Horford. So let me know in the comment section right now, should the Golden State sign Big Al? Why for yes and for no? Let me know what you think. All right, before we head out of here, I mentioned that the Pelicans had some soft rumors going around. They're out there. There's this crazy guys like Scoop B on the internet just like pushing Pelicans, Kuminga stuff. Like, look, it's going to be very difficult for them to make a deal and really borderline impossible if they're not including one of Trey Murphy or Herb Jones. And if I'm the Pelicans, I'm not doing that and touching that with a 10-foot pole. I think Herb Jones is an elite player. I think Trey Murphy could be an all-star in this league. And look, if the Warriors could somehow swing one of those guys for Kuminga, like Mike Dunleavy deserves a statue, in my opinion. So look, there's Pelicans rumors out there. If he ends up getting dealt to New Orleans, I would love to see the return that gets back to Golden State, but these rumors are not really heating up, especially as hot as the Sacramento Kings ones are. We'll see where the Kuminga stuff ends up, and that's why you subscribe to the channel. That will do it for today's edition of Warriors Today by Chat Sports. And if we hear anything new on the Kuminga front, you know we're going to bring you a video. So lock us in, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys all in the next one. And as always, let's go Dubs.